Hello there.
Hey
How are
Andy,
you,
how's
Brian?
everything? Good, good.
Y-
Good to see you.
Yeah, good. Yeah, great to see you. All right. So, just welcome to everyone who's just joined us. It is Thursday, the 12th of December today, and Wednesday evening, where you are,
Yep.
Brian.
Wednesday
So,
for
good
me.
morning. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone who's just joined us. It's going to be an interesting 30 minutes where Brian and I will see what's going on in the market. You know, Brian, it's interesting. We were in the write up for this show. We were just talking about is the bull run over? And overnight, well, for me, overnight, it's Bitcoin's back above 100,000 again.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are kind of focusing on this 100K level as the validation that the bull market is still here. And yeah, it's a pretty big psychological support level for a lot of people. And if we're above, everyone's celebrating. If we're above, everyone gets, or below, everyone gets worried. I
Yep.
think in reality, uh, anything that would define whether a bull market is still going on is whether we're continuing to climb. And it's now been about what, 10 to 11 days since we saw our last all-time high, and we finally
Yep.
saw 100K or 103K get breached
Yep.
at that moment. We're
Hmm.
kind of sitting around 101 right now. That's great. But we have to remember a flat period doesn't mean we're still in a bull market. A bull market is justified by us continuing to grow. So we have to be not just satisfied by Bitcoin staying put right now. At the very least, people's bags aren't shrinking at the moment, and we've seen a lot of volatility this particular week. But I think for a lot of people, nobody really knows what they want to do yet. It's kind of this push and pull between small gains and small losses being taken right now by indecisive traders, but there's far from a consensus, which is usually the juiciest time for anything to happen, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the other day, when it dropped below, I think it hit as low as 94-ish, thereabouts. Yeah.
Yep,
And then since then, it's
94.3.
just, there we go. And since then, it's just gone, yeah, gone back to, above 100. And you're right, that's that psychological barrier. I mean, I remember back in the last cycle, that was what laser eyes was all about. Everyone was putting laser eyes on their pick. Yeah, for Bitcoin to hit 100K. So I think, yeah, with that psychological barrier. So where to from here, I guess? Well, maybe let's look at the market to see what's happening.
Sure, yeah. So we definitely got a boost in the past 24 hours by the U.S. CPI report coming out, and uh, I think any non-bad news was good news as far as that was concerned. I put out a post actually explaining how the market reacted. So we go back 3 months, right? We see that the rates were
Mhm.
cut back in mid-September by 50 BPS. That was a great move that allowed crypto to have that initial rise. Then we get this scare in early October for reasons beyond anything to do with the economy. And then all of a sudden, the CPI report, just as we're bottoming out, brings back this huge positive feeling from I think the whales and sharks in particular. And right around here, October 10th, 11th, this was essentially when the massive 2 month bull run began, just exactly 2 months ago. From there, we of course had Trump get elected right around here, and then the rates were cut again on November 7th, this time for 25 BPS. Regardless, anytime the rates are cut, we in crypto view this as a good thing because we acknowledge that there's some ties to world markets, and world markets are of course going to benefit from interest rate cuts due to the fact that they have less pressure on them from interest rates in order to profit and thrive. So
Mhm.
just like we saw in 2022 where the opposite was happening and we were seeing rates rising like crazy to compensate for the big cuts that were made in 2020 for COVID. Now we're kind of seeing a bunch of cuts once again where the Fed is acknowledging, okay, it kind of was risen a bit too far back in 2022. So we're going to start cutting again. And now people are getting very optimistic. And of course, the whales and sharks are too. We'll get to that later in this call. But we continue to get nice news from both the CPI reports and the actual Fed rate cuts. And whenever that happens, we tend to see a rise right after. And this past 24-hour period was no different, with this big spike you see in CPI discussion and then a rise back to 101K for Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's a cool chart there.
Yeah, I thought so. And looking at the overall markets, we have plenty of breakouts. Bitcoin is way down here at just plus 13.5% in the past 30 days. But most of the top 60, top 70 coins on this view here have outpaced Bitcoin, especially XRP up nearly 4x, Stellar right here up nearly 4x, and then Hedera up 5x over the past 30 days. So there have been a lot of big stories and a lot of people who took gambles on particularly OG altcoins that were kind of being a little bit disregarded, while so much attention was on meme coins throughout 2024. So XRP, Stellar, even Cardano, I think a lot of people were kind of writing them off as has-been coins. And all of a sudden they explode with market cap for a variety of reasons. And here's the result, just massive breakouts as a result of altcoiners looking elsewhere. And that's how things typically work.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The term dino coins come to mind. I've seen a lot of on social media. Speaking of dino coins, one of the oldest coins, Litecoin, has also surprised some folks. I think it started when I think the said intern took over the X account of Litecoin and started identifying as a meme coin, and then in that process they created a Lester, the Litecoin mascot, and since then it's gone above $100, where it was hovering around the 69-70 for quite a long time. Do we have any insights on Litecoin?
Yeah, I mean, if you can't beat them, join them, as they say. And I think Litecoin was kind of sitting and not doing a whole bunch for much of 2023 and 2024. And so their company decided, you know what, if meme coins are what are getting all the attention right now, let's bring in some humor and some fun into our asset to resonate with the audience that crypto is being comprised of these days. And I think we've seen some good traction from them as a result. We can jump into Litecoin sentiment really quick. And based on what we're seeing here, let's zoom out this price just a bit. So we did have a big correction beginning on December 6th until now. And it did start to bounce just in the past 24 hours. But yeah, I mean, since November 4th, 5th, right when Trump got elected, it's still up about 79% as one of the better performing assets and one of the many dino coins, as you say, that's had a little bit of a breakout. So sentiment wise, outside of this huge anomaly, if we just look at perhaps the last month or so, I'll just highlight this part of the chart. It's been pretty up and down. Sentiment isn't too crazy in either direction. You can see these big spikes on December 1st and December 5th were kind of indicating we were getting a little bit overheated with Litecoin's run, and that was a pretty optimal time to take profit right before this big drop happened. But regardless, sentiment looks pretty mediocre right now, which is fine. We don't want it to look too FOMO-y, if you will. And then if we look at some of the other metrics here, there we go. So yeah, if we just we'll go last 3 months, transaction volumes kind of declined a bit, but you can see how much it really climbed during that run up. So people were paying attention. Active addresses in circulation, nothing special. I will say that the average returns for Litecoin are starting to look a little on the risky side. If you were to add on to your position right now in Litecoin, uh, being at plus 10% for the 30-day and plus 40 for the 365-day, this is definitely overheated for a metric that's supposed to be a zero-sum game. It spends an equal amount of time above or below zero. So the fact that it's above means you'd be buying into a coin that your competing traders have already profited off of. Funding rate is pretty neutral, so nothing too scary there. Whale transactions have been consistently pretty high, about 5 to 650 a day. And then here's what I wanted to check out. So Litecoin's price is sitting at 117. We can start looking at sharks right about 1,000 or above. So if we just highlight the amount of Litecoin held by all wallets with at least 1,000 LTC, they have definitely been moving in the right direction. If we correlate that with price really quick here. So yeah, you can check out how really right around early November when Trump was elected, that's when the fun really began. And this group of holders and traders really started to aggressively accumulate and create some positive momentum for the asset. And even after this dip, you can see they really haven't stopped. They're still accumulating pretty aggressively here. So I think that's a good sign for Litecoin. And overall, it could be a coin that performs well as long as Bitcoin holds water.
Yeah, no, thanks for that analysis. It's interesting to see that the whales, those who hold 1,000 or more Litecoin, are still accumulating. Interesting.
Absolutely.
On the flip side, does that mean the other group are actually selling out to this group?
Yeah, I think that's safe to assume if we go to the amount held by under 1,000. So they've been moving way down. And this is a good pattern. When our founder, Maxim, talks about metrics he really keeps a close eye on, this is one of the first. What are these smaller wallets doing versus the larger ones? And obviously they're going to be inverted because there's a limited amount of coins that can be moved, even with Litecoin being mined on a daily basis. But yeah, coins under 1,000, they were holding 17.55 million, and they've dropped to 16.85 million. So about 4% of their entire bags have been dropped over the past 4.5 weeks or so.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I suppose when that trend reverses, that's when the smaller holders are buying, and the whales have had enough profit.
Right.
In there. Yeah.
When you start seeing the sharks and whales dropping while the retail holders are accumulating those coins, that's when you most likely want to get out, because it typically means that the key stakeholders are taking a breather, and they're typically the ones that are keeping prices moving in the right direction.
Interesting. Thanks for that, Brian.
Definitely. What else are you keeping an eye on yourself over at EquitiesTracker right now, Andy?
Look, I think we really the other one that we're tracking, obviously, Bitcoin as always, and Ethereum. Ethereum, I think in most of 2024, a lot of the narrative was that Ethereum is done for, and this and that, because everything can be done on Solana, much faster and cheaper, and all the layer twos on Ethereum is taking away the need to pay for transaction fees on layer one on Ethereum, and therefore it's but yeah, so that's one of the but then obviously it's made a comeback, a bit of a comeback since then. So yeah, shall we have a look at Ethereum?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the number 2 market cap, there was a recent celebration when it got back over 4K for the first time in quite some time. It did retrace back below, and it's currently sitting at about 38.15 at the time of this recording. Transaction volume, you can see how it's really moved in the right direction as prices have risen to justify that this isn't a fluke. So that's good news. Active addresses and circulation have both been rising as well. So I like to see that. MVRV, not nearly as scary as Litecoin or Bitcoin for what it's worth. Ethereum's average holders over the past 30 days, anyone that's been active during that time, they're only up about plus 7.2%, even though going back 30 days, the price of Ethereum has gone up about plus 18% during that time. So average traders are doing much worse than the actual price performance. So they're doing a lot of buying at the top or selling at the bottom and causing the average returns to be pretty reasonable. Meaning if you added on or bought a new position in Ethereum, you wouldn't be doing so for an asset that has already been cashed in on by tons and tons of traders. Long term plus 24%, not too scary either. So I think that's a optimistic argument for Ethereum's, final stretch of 2024. In terms of funding rate, very slight longing going on BitMEX and nothing on Binance. So there isn't a crazy amount of greed there either. You can see whale transactions here defined as $1 million or more. They really started to move up over the past month. I don't see any extremes that would show that they're taking an enormous amount of profit right now. So that's a good thing. And then if we look at the amount of Ethereum held by sharks and whales, which in this case we can define as any wallets with about 100 or more, because that's about $400,000 or more. So we'll put those all together here in blue, and then we'll look at under 100, and that'll show up in red. And again, that looks like a pretty good sign to me. I like to see consistent growth from the 100 plus Ethereum wallets while the retailers are non-believers and they're continuing to sell off. Again, just like Litecoin, that's what you should be looking for. When it moves the opposite direction, that's when you should get worried and there's justification to profit take. But even going back in history, let's say 2 years of this, you can see during this stretch where retail was really FOMOing in, that led to this extended period of dropping, right? As the whales were actually going down for once. They weren't believers in early 2023. And then finally, as Ethereum dropped, that's when whales kicked it into gear and just have accumulated ever since. So I find that quite fascinating.
You know what's interesting, Brian, is that even in TradFi with stocks, because what we analyze are the institutional investors versus the retail investors. Right. You see the same pattern playing out every time. When the institutions are accumulating, the retailers, are selling. And vice versa. It's always that same pattern.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a tale as old as time. We've seen it since the dawning of trading. When the whales are deciding to pump up prices, they can do so, and then they can, pull the rug out at any time and send prices dropping just from their capital getting moved out of that asset.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Brian, the other day, what I saw pretty interesting on X was the longs versus the shorts on Litecoin. From what you showed earlier, maybe it was back to like it was normal, but then I think there were a lot of shorts when Litecoin was on the rise. Just wondering if we can have a look.
Yeah, we don't have the exact amount of shorts or longs, but we can look
Yep.
at funding rates. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
pulling up the total open interest here, which is just the total amount of money that's being poured into Litecoin through margin or leveraged
Okay.
wallets. And you do see there was this big liquidation event here on December 7th. I'll zoom in a little bit.
Yep.
Make this a brighter color. So yeah, it got up to about $567 million or so. And then right at its top on December 5th, it fell all the way. Yeah, the total open interest just over a 5-day period dropped by about 43%, which is just massive. So that was the liquidation event that I think took out a lot of longs. And immediately after, you can see how the funding rate kind of neutralized. Now,
Yep.
whoever's saying there's more shorts than longs, that's probably greatly exaggerated. There were just so many longs before that they kind of got flushed out during this down move here. And then once the longs went away, that allowed Litecoin's price to start to churn upwards once again, as you can see.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks
But yeah,
for confirming that.
definitely. I don't see just a crazy amount of shorts that would indicate that we were seeing anything like these little red anomalies back in September. Those would be fantastic times to buy if you do see an asset with a negative funding rate on Binance. So look for those as great buy signals if they do pop up.
Sure. Absolutely. All right. So we've probably got 6 minutes left. Do we want to look at Bitcoin and see if there's anything that stands out?
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it brief for Bitcoin. It's pretty much sitting in neutral at the moment. Obviously, today was a good day. And the whales are continuing to accumulate. We've talked about this many times on this show, Andy, where you've got this bright green line representing 10 plus BTC continuing to move upward. If we go back just about exactly 2 months, the wallets with at least 10 Bitcoin have added on collectively 113,330 Bitcoin during that time. That's a massive, massive move upward. And for context, going back the past year, I will just do 6 months. So this is like the normal rate of accumulation. And then all of a sudden, about 3 weeks before Trump got elected, whether people got word of that or they just got a huge vote of confidence from the Fed cutting interest rates, they just started to accumulate very, very aggressively and haven't stopped. So I think this is still a very good sign for those doubting that we've lost bullish momentum. Still, it appears as though whales and sharks aren't going anywhere, and they expect prices to continue to climb, and they're accumulating with confidence. Meanwhile, miners are actually dropping, which is interesting to me, but they haven't had correlation on the price for a very long time.
Yeah. I'm sure Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy had a lot to contribute to that as well.
Yeah, I was looking at the frequency of how much they've been mentioned the other day. So I just put in their ticker, master, or MicroStrategy here. And overall, it looks like when they are mentioned, it kind of does have an impact on price, more so positive than negative, because we have been in a 2-month clear bull market, and whenever they announce they're buying more, the retail traders get a boost of confidence themselves and buy a little more Bitcoin whenever possible, or at least they get a lot more FOMO. So the amount of discussion related to the company, or we could even add Saylor to this and go back 1 year just to see how much more they're talked about now. Yeah, so look at this. The data is showing, that's fine, I'll just take off the red line. So back in December all the way through about August, per hour they were getting maybe 15 to 40 mentions, and then all of a sudden we're getting hundreds, if not over 1,000 at a few points here, where the company or Michael Saylor are just being frequently mentioned and attributed to as part of the reason that we've seen this historic run.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the last time we really got a big ascension, just to warn, was right before the then all-time high in March. And, um, a lot of people were saying MicroStrategy's buying, so everything is great. And then all of a sudden we end up topping out. I wouldn't necessarily say they're a powerful enough entity to completely cause a top in the markets. Maybe if they secretly sold half of their supply, that's something that could be really bad. But I don't think that the company at this time has the intention to rug pull the entire sector. But it's just something to keep in mind. It's kind of like looking at meme coins. Everyone starts talking about them as we're really ascending, and then all of a sudden we drop down. But so far, so good. MicroStrategy seems to have quite a positive reputation at this time.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, Brian. Hey, so this happens to be the final show for the 2024, and it's been a great run, and we're gonna start and continue in 2025 again. Any words of wisdom that you'd like to share with the viewers?
Yeah, obviously, Andy, we've really enjoyed doing the shows with you, and I'm personally thrilled to always hear your insights once a month about where we stand in the markets. For your audience and our audience watching this, I always just recommend, not investing what you cannot afford to lose. That's the first piece of advice that doesn't take a genius to say. I'd also be a little aware of, a potential pullback. Many of you may have entered the markets in the last 1 to 2 months, and all you've seen are green candles, right? But eventually that will stop, and we will see some periods of time that challenge your ability to stay in the sector. You might think you got scammed. You might think that this was all just a big ruse. Crypto is not a ruse. It is very much a real sector that has value and is and should be the future of the world and the way we transact. It may not be the only way, but I would stay quite confident in crypto, regardless of whether Bitcoin is valued at 100K, 200K, or 25K. And sometimes people forget that. So with this being a big year for all sectors, equities, crypto, everything else out there, even gold and silver had huge years. Understand that the taxes are big. Whales and sharks will be paying some capital gains, and oftentimes they do profit take right at the end of the year. So don't be surprised if you see a little bit of a leg down at some point. It might be very short-lived, though, if it happens. So try to think long-term and don't react too much to the short-term swings. We will keep everyone posted if we see huge data anomalies showing up on chain. And in short, just stay safe, guys.
No, thanks for that. That's sound advice. Yeah, look, it's been a really enjoyable year. I always look forward to our session, every month. It's been great. I enjoy hearing, that data-driven approach to what's actually happening, rather than, just trawling social media and getting influenced and getting sucked into the narrative of what everyone else is saying. Here, we're objectively looking at data which tells us this or that, right? And it's non-biased, right? It's just this is what the data is showing us, and really how we interpret that's dependent on how we view it. So we hope to continue doing this every second Thursday / Wednesday of the month. And next year, for January, the founder of Santiment, Maxim, would like to do a live session. And so, but I think, yeah, so keep a lookout for that, right? We and there you'll be able to ask your questions live, and then we'll do some real-time analysis. Should be interesting. Depending on the time difference, Brian, I think might be sleepy time during the live session. So we'll coordinate in the background, and then it'll be great to have you and Maxim on at the same time for that live session. Yeah.
I'd love to be there if it makes sense. So we'll definitely talk about it. And regardless, I've appreciated doing these shows, and I'm not going anywhere. So if we skip talking next month, let's just cross our fingers to see how things do, and we'll reconvene in February.
Absolutely. And look, it's it's just been a great year of insights. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Santiment, for sharing these insights with us. We look forward to a fantastic year for 2025. Brian, wishing you and your family and all the audience out there who celebrate Christmas a Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Stay safe, and a fantastic start to 2025.
Cheers, Andy. Same to you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.